Hey, what's up guys? My name is Moda and welcome back to the Mining Stacker YouTube channel. Today's video, we're going to take a deep look into ASIC miners coming into 2025. So what we're going to look at which machines we're specifically looking at, which ones are likely to get replacements coming in 2025, and just kind of give our overall thoughts going down pretty much all the major algos, and then spending a little bit more time on the ones that we do find value in still for 2025. Okay, so if that sounds good, guys, stay tuned. Let's get right to this thing. So, a lot going into this, right? So, been getting a lot of questions regarding which ones to get. Is it worthwhile still getting into? And let me go a little bit deeper into the common answer I give, and a lot of it is just dependent on your individual goals, and it really truly is. Okay, because at this point, from my perspective, again, all of this is going to be from my perspective and the way I view the market, which is going to be typically a little bit different from a lot of others. Okay, the way I view it, one of the biggest value propositions with ASICs is being able to stack that coin for a long period of time. I'm not getting an ASIC with the intention of trying to maximize 6 months worth of profits, 10 months worth of profits. If I'm getting into an ASIC, I want to be able to mine for it at least a solid year, maybe year and a half, potentially even longer. So for me, those are the ones that truly have value. And in this current climate, where we are at now, which is January 2025, again, we are in the year after the halving, which is typically the bullish year for this cycle. Typically, we're going to peak out sometime Q3, Q4, sometime between potentially September, November, maybe sooner, maybe later. We don't really know, but I'm going to base it off of the typical cycle from here. Okay, does that mean that once the peak hits, that immediately we're going to go down 90%? No, not necessarily either. Depending on the algo, depending on the coin, still may be able to mine profitably for quite a bit after. Okay, but for me, again, what I'm going to value are the algos that I think will provide value beyond this bull market. Okay, so that's going to be a common thing. In every ASIC video I do, there's always somebody. It's too late to get into ASIC mining. This is where the individual goals come into play. So if you are a brand new person, fresh capital, I probably wouldn't recommend dumping 17K into a L9 if you're unaware of how the market's going to work. Okay, because at that point, realistically, you're probably better off putting 17K into the market, into even a potentially conservative coin, maybe something like Solana, AVAX. Obviously not as conservative as Bitcoin and such, but depending on your viewpoint, where you can potentially do a 2 or 3x from there. If you put 17K towards that L9 right now, are you going to necessarily do a minimum 3x? Are you going to at least get $51,000 in revenue back? Kind of hard to say, right? So from that viewpoint, you are a little bit on the late end, right? At that point, what I would probably do is go something maybe a little less risk, maybe one of these smaller miners that does have decent efficiency that can still get you where you want to be at, to kind of learn, see how it goes, see how it works, and do a lot of research. Okay. Now, if you are a person who already has mining hardware and you're looking at just continuing to either grow or roll out, get out of your older hardware and roll it into new hardware, this is where, of course, it still makes sense, right? Especially some of you guys who have had an L7, for example, these past 2-3 years. Definitely makes sense to, now that it's valued a lot more, you've been able to stack for 2 to 3 years, and now, depending on where you got it at, you're going to be able to sell it for, in some cases, a significant profit on top of that. So in that case, it 100% makes sense to sell that L7 now, upgrade to that L9. Okay, same thing with any other hardware. If you have other hardware that has potentially pumped, which is what I'm kind of waiting for. Will it happen? Won't it happen? We don't know. But for example, if you are sitting on whatever other altcoin ASIC, you want to wait for that coin to pump. Now your ASIC's worth a little bit more or significantly more, depending on the scenario here. You sell that, and then now you roll it into another ASIC miner. Or if you just have your stable and you're just continuing to grow from here, right? Again, it's vastly, majorly dependent on that person's individual goals. Or some people even like to degen. They literally just want to get in and out in 6 months. They want to get it now, mine what they can these next 6 to 8 months, and then sell it before the potential downturn of the market, right? It's very, very dependent, but just to put out a general statement that no, it's too late to ASIC mine, that's also not true, right? Again, it's very, very dependent on those individual goals, okay? So just something to consider there. As we go through the list, I mean, we can see it's dominated by script and ETH hash, right? Ironically, there is one here. Realistically, I wouldn't even factor this one in though, the X44P, just because it's not actually released yet. We'll talk about potential release window here towards the end when we get into ETH hash ASICs. But one thing I do want to stress is the timing of different releases. Okay, so we don't really know, so we're going to speculate as far as potential replacements or upgrade models. We don't know the extent of that upgrade. Is it going to be massive? Is it even going to come? Right, so a lot of the ones that I'm kind of not really eyeing, it's because it's most likely that there is high potential for replacement, but we don't know if that replacement's going to come. It may come, it may not come, right? There's a lot of factors here and a lot of interesting things going on. Do want to highlight one kind of weird tweet coming from Bitmain. This was just, today actually, early this morning. And this was for futures of the L7, okay? The reason I'm saying this is a little bit weird is because we know script ASICs are all the hype, right? Realistically, you would think they'd be producing the L7s, L9s, as many as they can to kind of satisfy demand, because this is definitely going to be the most sought after, right? Just to kind of highlight the video, script is probably the algo to focus on. Why? Because of longevity. It is a mature network that can support a lot of this hash rate. Yes, your yield is going to go down, but it's not going to be something the extent of what we see with typically a lot of these other altcoin ASICs. Okay, and again, if you are investing in the more efficient units, you're kind of just locking in the amount of time it's going to be profitable for. Okay, so the reason I'm eyeing the more efficient ASICs is because, again, I'm looking for beyond just this bull market. Okay, so again, each individual goal is going to vary. So again, what's interesting here is that the shipping window, okay, the price point's also pretty decent, but it's the shipping window. It's not until June. So what is that kind of telling us? They're producing a lot of other units. Is it replacement units for some of these that do need upgrades? Because again, like we mentioned, Q1 leading into Q2 is typically when a lot of the releases come out or get announced from what we've seen from Bitmain these past 2-3 years. Okay, so is it because of that? Is it because they're fulfilling all those BTC orders? Again, we saw all those like S21, those 3U units. Crazy, crazy deals with those. Is it because they're satisfying that? They're satisfying other big farms orders? Because again, when they do the orders, they're in the hundreds of millions of dollars, right? So they are crazy, crazy big. So are they a backlog? So just stuff to consider here. Because again, if they're able to flip them out or they had them ready, they would be launching these things now. So the fact that the window's not until June 2025, kind of telling us that maybe expect other altcoin ASICs coming that may be worth quite a bit. Okay, or maybe not. Again, maybe they're just fulfilling all those Bitcoin ASIC orders. We don't know. Just found that to be kind of a little interesting here. So as we go down the list, we're literally just going to go through each algo. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the less interesting ones just because, well, we'll talk about it. Let's go. So we'll start off with the K7, which is that CKB Nervos ASIC. Wouldn't necessarily recommend getting into it now just because, again, they have the first batch listed as November 22, but we all know, for those of you who got into it, they didn't really ship until Q1 of 23. Okay, so it's going on being damn near 2 years old. So any of you guys who got one of these when they first came out, like myself, it's almost 2 years old. Typically, what is the life cycle of a lot of these ASICs? Well, now more recently, it seems to be like 3 months, but in the past, it was like 1.5 to 2 years. Okay, so to me, extremely likely on the list of potentially getting a replacement, potentially getting a K9, etc. If it were to come out, most likely, again, look for that February, March, April period. That tends to be when a lot of the announcements get made, etc., etc. Another thing to factor in here, I wouldn't pay an excessive amount for one of these units considering the time frame. Okay, again, there's only a few coins that I'm going to be interested in. Beyond this bull market, CKB wouldn't necessarily be one of them. Okay, especially to pay at an overpriced level. So the fact that this guy is likely to get a replacement soon, I wouldn't necessarily jump into a K7 now. Okay, kind of the same story with the KA3. Pretty much same window, right? Spring 23 is when, or Q1 23 is when we finally got him. Almost 2 years old. Currently, pretty likely, if Kadena pumps, expect that replacement to come. So again, you're not going to see these replacements or announcements for these replacements until there's a reason to. Until you see CKB pump, Kadena pump, any of these other coins pump. So also factor that in. Like even if they are planning a March release, you're not going to hear about it until it pumps. Or even if it's not going to come out until farther down the road, guess what's going to happen when it does pump? The pre-orders are going to open up for whenever the time frame of these units is going to come out. Okay, so for me, this is another one I wouldn't consider this late in the game. Again, 2 years ago when we had time to stack in the bear market, that was the time. Okay. Caspa ASICs. This is another one that to me, if you got in on this last batch, these past few months, to me, that's kind of the extreme cutoff, right? Realistically, the time was prior to that. A lot of us grew within that time, but to get into one at this point, order one, wait a few months to get one, or even if it's their spot, extremely hard to justify getting into it now at this point just because of how much the hash rate has gone up on top of the emissions reductions. A lot going on, and again, just the timing of this bull market. Okay, so if you got in now, if you got in the past few months, I still see it as being pretty good. I know a lot of people don't see it that way, but currently right now, for example, if you're getting about 80 casts a day, which is a drastic, it's crazy to see that it's that low now just because of how much the hash rate's gone up. But again, the way I view it in terms of fiat, I value at what I value that Caspa. Again, I mine and hodl. That's my strategy. Everybody's strategy is going to be different here. But I still see Cas at 50 cents eventually, sometime throughout this bull market. So I would see that as generating about 40 bucks a day. Okay. So kind of to each their own, again, different strategies, but I would not recommend getting one going forward just because, again, also a lot of rumors about a bigger unit, although I personally haven't heard any. I've heard of other people mentioning it, but talking to people in the scene, I haven't heard of any officially. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but even if they do, just because, again, where we're on the timeline and that aggressive emissions reduction, to me, it would still be a no-go. Okay. Although what I will say about these units, though, very solid units. Like, eventually, if CAS does have a pump in these next 3 to 6 months, I will definitely sell off the other two ASICs. The KS5, I'll probably run all the way to the end. Just because if you're in a hot climate, this thing is your BFF. It loves to run hot, and as a matter of fact, needs to run hot. It actually struggles in cold temperatures. So, just a neat little tidbit there. For Radiant ASICs, so this one I would also recommend skipping, even if the RX3 comes out, the bigger unit, at this current time. Okay, a big part of the reason, even aside from the timeline and everything such, it's just such a cheap coin. Right now, current market cap, it is under $10 million. Ranked number 19. It's gonna get out of the top 2,000 pretty soon, which is pretty nuts. At this point, if you are bullish on Radiant, buy the coin. You're going to do significantly better just buying the coin outright. Even if they do release a big 3,500 water, at this current time, it makes more sense to buy the coin. If during these next 6 to 10 months, Radiant does a 10x, 20x, then obviously it's going to be different. But at this current time, it 100% makes more sense to just buy the coin. Okay, currently for 500 bucks, you can get about 659,000. Currently, our RX0 is going to yield you about 600 RXD a day, so it would take you 1,000 days to accrue that if the difficulty doesn't go up, which we all know is not going to happen. So to me, it makes 0 sense. And again, even if you scale this thing up into a larger unit, with Radiant's current price where it's at now, it 100% makes way more sense to buy the coin. Okay. Same exact story here with Nexa. Exactly the same scenario. If you are interested, even if a more efficient unit comes out at Nexa's current price and valuation, it just 100% makes more sense to just buy the coin. So these two wouldn't even consider at all either. Regardless of what comes out, again, they're just such a tiny market cap that realistically we're not ready for ASICs, but here we are. So again, I'm not saying that I'm not bullish on either one of those. Those are two actually that I am holding, but I would not be mining it, would have zero interest in an ASIC just because of where the price is right now. Okay. On to the next one, and this is Equihash. So currently, the time to get these was when these guys first came out. Again, not too long after they came out, they were like under 2,000 bucks for the Z15 Pros. Can also even get the Z15s, which again wasn't a huge upgrade with these guys. Okay, the Z15 Pro is more efficient, but not by a whole lot. In terms of profitability and what it mines, so we're gets a little bit bearish just because Zen is going to go proof of stake. Zcash does have the plans eventually to go proof of stake. And then what's going to happen there? When that does happen, all that hash rate is going to go on to the other algos. Luckily, this is one of those units that does have other coins. It does have Secret, it does have Pirate. So you do have other options there, but at its current price for Z15 Pro, I would personally skip. Again, it's also getting close to the 2-year mark. It's closer to a year and a half. But potentially a replacement unit, although when we compare the Z15 Pro and the regular Z15, was not much of an upgrade, and there is zero competition here. So that's what kind of makes it appealing to an extent. Would I be buying one, though? Absolutely not, right? This is one that wouldn't be on my radar, at least for the Z15 Pro. You get a good deal on the Z15? Sure, why not? So again, individual goals. The D9, which is X11, so they do have it here as a loss. There are other coins that it does mine that are merge mineable and such, but realistically, just again, timing wise, this one was good for a while with, forget the name, BlockX, I think was the name of the project, where when it first came out, people were trying to do what they can to get enough for those nodes, which again, I'm not a fan of those node things. It's a big reason why. So it did do quite well initially. Ultimately, though, not too great. Dash is one of those dinosaur coins that I don't know if it'll necessarily come back. And again, the same thing is that this one, it's likely due for a potentially an upgrade. There is no competition here, though. So maybe, maybe not. But this is not one I would have my eye on. Even if there is a D11 or a next unit. Just because Dash also, just not a coin I'm necessarily bullish on. Right? If you're in the Dash ecosystem and you see something there, can be a little bit different. But definitely not for me. X5, which is that Monero ASIC, they kind of broke their promise of the initial advertising for this thing that they would have other coins that you'd be able to mine. They never did any of that garbage, right? So big fail on that one. Is it holding up though? Again, for a little 1300 watt, we'll call it an ASIC. It's not really an ASIC though. Not too bad. It's still profitable. It's still doing its thing. Monero's not going anywhere. So not too bad, not something that would be on my radar. I know there's been a high failure rate with these things. Parts is going to be a nightmare with these things just because, again, not that many were produced, not that many were purchased, right? So factor those things in. On to the next one, Sia coin. So SC, this is another one. Tiny market cap coin, which this one did have a lot of random pumps throughout this bear market. Very likely, though, that we get new hardware. Newest hardware they have here is the IB-Link BMS3. So IB-Link and Goldshell are big on these. Are they going to have new units? Maybe, maybe not. Is this one I would necessarily get? If they were to release a brand new unit and demolish everything else, no. To each their own on this one. Again, you could potentially find some of these units fairly cheap. It's just, again, timing-wise, do I think it's going to be profitable beyond this bull market? Not really, right? So again, to each their own on that one. Let's go to the next one. Handshake. There's not a single profitable Handshake ASIC at 10 cents a kilowatt hour. That should kind of tell you something. Definitely a high degen play. A lot of volatility with that coin price. A lot of volatility. It's kind of crazy. I do have one of these HS3s. It's been unplugged for quite a few months. Will it come back? I don't know. I mined a decent amount. I'm happy with the allocation I had. That was the goal amount. We'll see what it turns into. Maybe it does something. Maybe it goes to zero. It's a lot higher on the going to zero route than anything. Recently did have that pump just because of the new CryptoZars. David Sachs apparently has his VC, and they are invested in Handshake. Then that was the reason for that recent pump. But it went that fast, right? So maybe it pans out, maybe it doesn't. Would I be buying one at this current time? No, right? Let's keep going down. Handshake, we can't see here because of that recent pump. The hash rate did go up quite a bit. See if we can scroll down, and then it did have a recent dump just because the price also dumped, right? So this one, once the hash rate equalizes, and if it does actually go down here, maybe it'd be time to turn it back on, but realistically, probably not. On to the next one, and this is where things are starting to get interesting. So the next few algos we'll talk about are the more interesting ones, right? One of them being Alephium. Okay, so a lot of hype with this guy, a lot of attention with this guy. Although the big turnoff for me was this recent pump that it had, and that was kind of a killer for me, right? Initially, if the price would have kind of remained where it was, I would have been more bullish on it, but because of this little pump that kind of came, what happened, right? A lot of people were going to end up buying the AO3. The hope was that we kind of stayed sideways and therefore giving us more time to stack. If there's more interest in it, what's going to happen? The hash rate and such is going to go up, which we've already seen to start here. We are currently at, what, 36, 37, 37, about 38. Our prediction was potentially 60. Whether it happens an hour later, we don't know, but it's going to happen. It's going to be inevitable. As far as whether this guy is worth getting now, so right, realistically, it's going to be another week or so till we see the full extent of what the hash rate is going to increase. So this one is another one that's dependent on your goals, right? From a pure ROI standpoint, whether it makes more sense to buy the unit or buy the coin. Let's do a little bit of quick math. Currently, right now, the AL3, again, you want to focus on the yield. If you're looking at these things, focus on your yield. Currently, it's going to be yielding about 15 ALF a day. Let's say once that hash rate settles, which our prediction was about 60 petahash, somewhere between 50 to 60, that it brings our yield down to about 10 ALF a day. Okay, if we're doing 10 ALF a day over the course of a month, that's what? About 300 ALF. For the $3,800, you can buy about 2,900 ALF at its current price. And again, this is based off of ALF's current price, which did, again, recently have a pretty good dip. So you can get about 3,000 ALF. So again, if you're yielding about 30 ALF a day with that unit, it's going to take you about 10 months, right? So 300 ALF a month, 10 months is about 3,000 ALF. If the difficulty doesn't increase, if everything remains the same, which we all know not going to happen, right? That's a fictional scenario that we're just kind of pointing out, right? So in the dream scenario that nothing changes from that point, after this initial run up, it would take you 10 months to recoup that back, right? So this is where it gets tricky. So from looking at it from that viewpoint, does it make sense? Now, does that mean you bought this thing, oh, it's going to be a dud, I got screwed over? I don't think so either. Okay, this is one coin that I am very bullish on. I think it is going to do extremely well. This, to me, out of the altcoin ASICs, has the biggest potential to do potentially what like Cadena did, to do this massive little pump over here. Okay, a couple of big factors. It is a tiny market cap coin still. It is ranked number 538. It has solid team, solid fundamentals, solid building. They are always continuing to build. Their DeFi is taking off. A lot of interest is coming in. And even other bigger interest is coming in. I don't know if you guys saw this. This is something that happened about a month ago now. And this was the big news with Gigatons to drive Gigaton's $1 billion climate revolution. So they did sign a big deal to be the coin of choice for gigatons for their marketplace here, right? So pretty big development here. So has all the little tidbits for it to have a massive pump. Again, because it's a smaller cap coin, doesn't necessarily take a lot of liquidity or just actual cash to kind of bring this coin up, right? So there's a lot of potential for this coin, a lot of incentive for these manufacturers to also pump this coin, to invest in this coin, to invest in that ecosystem, and for it to run up. Okay, so obviously when we're looking at it from the pure ROI standpoint, it's like, oh, well, you could buy the coin. You can still do extremely well because, again, doing it from how I do it, right, which I value the coin, I'm saying that Alpha is going to do $10 sometime throughout this bull market. Whether it stair ladder goes up or if it's an all-in-one shot like Adina in November, I do feel confident that at some point it is going to hit that $10, right? Now, financial advice, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But if it were to, even if it goes down to the 10 alpha day, it's still about $100 a day equivalent, right? So again, different viewpoints, different goal points, but again, the reason I decided kind of against it was it's just cheaper to buy the coin currently where it's at. Again, this is going to look drastically different. This profitability and everything is also going to look drastically different when Alephium does go to $4, when it goes to $5, when it goes to $8, when it goes to $10, and if it goes beyond that. Again, it does have the potential to actually go beyond that. So still does have a ton of potential. Just understand what you're getting yourself into when you're getting into this thing, right? Which is why we said that although initially it looked good because it was making 30-some bucks a day just a few weeks ago, we were saying to expect it to drop significantly just to focus on the yield. Because again, even if it's just like, for example, the little AL zeros back there, it's mine. Those are going to go down too. They're going to go down to probably an alpha day here pretty soon, which is some people are like, oh, that's horrible. It's whatever. I'm still valuing that alpha at $10, right? So to me, that's still $10 a day eventually. Okay, so to each their own. Obviously, it'd be more bullish if Alephium went up before then, or maybe the hash rate didn't go up as high, but those are the risk factors you take when jumping into any of these ASICs, right? None of this stuff is guaranteed. You just have to understand the risk level on each one, which again, that's what we're saying, the AL3, a lot of potential, but extremely high on the risk factor, right? So again, to sum up, it can still and probably will still do extremely well, okay? But just from the viewpoint of right now, this second, if you have the $3,800 to either buy one or buy the coin, arguably makes more sense to buy the coin here, right? So to each their own. Let's go down some of the other ones. So the big one is the script ASICs. This is probably, again, like we kind of prefaced, the algo to be looking into. The hard part is that Doge did run up very early, very aggressively. Okay, so the prices went up aggressively because of that. Because all of us who are here, who are following the game, we all have been talking about script ASICs for months and months and months because of what? Because of the longevity factor, right? So because of that, and then Doge pumping early, prices are up because all the interest is here. Okay, so does that mean that, oh man, it's 13K, it was 6K not too long ago for the January batch? So very true, right? But again, you have to think goals. Like, what is your ultimate goal here? Is it to try to break even? Is it to try to mine beyond this bull market, which would be mine, which is why I'm still eyeing them. Okay, so for me though, I want the more efficient units. I don't necessarily want to go to the less efficient units like any of the gold shells, the DG Maxes, although they are appealing for a lot of people. Just understand that beyond this bull market, and let's say 6 months after, if the cycle repeats, if things kind of happen again, it may not be profitable for quite a while after. Okay, versus the more efficient units, it just increases the likelihood and longevity that it's going to remain at least break even or better, right? Which I know that sounds crazy, but again, 2 years from now, it's going to be a drastically different market. Okay, so just factor that in. Now, as we go down the list, again, the L9's at 13K, which is pretty steep. A lot of people are going to be looking at some of the at-home ASICs, which for me, if your goal is only to get like 1 or 2 units, period, you're kind of just starting, then it makes sense, right? For me, realistically, I would much rather go with the density of their bigger units and realistically having the units out of the house, right? So like even the experiment we here with some of these little home ASICs, come the summer, I'm going to have to get rid of either the AL0s or the Jazz Miner, and those are going in the garage, right? Or at least out of this room because it's too damn hot, right? So it depends on your individual climate. I'm down here in Florida where we really only have like 2 cold months of the year. Summer starts pretty much in March again. Okay, so for me, the thought of having, let's say, like 5 of these little DG homes indoors, hell no. And do I have confidence that they'll do well in my hot ass garage, like how these bigger ASICs will do? Probably not. So for me, they're not very appealing. Bang for the buck wise, though, the DG Home 1 is pretty decent on the smaller end. The new Volk miner, this D1, very aggressive with the price. Actually just went up $100. So not going to be shipping until April, it looks like. Price per gigahash and efficiency wise, very good. The downfall is the release window, which is until April. Okay, which we know a lot of times the shipping window could mean end of April, means you don't get it until May, and that's if there's no delays. And then also quality wise, right? We don't know longevity wise how well these Volk miners will do. So a lot of factors in here, right? So again, the biggest thing with me at least, I value longevity the most. If I'm purchasing an ASIC, I'm purchasing a miner, I want to be able to mine on that thing for 1.5 years, 2 years, right? If it looks like that's not going to happen, not something I have the greatest interest in. And with Volk Miner, we don't know durability, we don't know longevity here. Those are huge, huge question marks. They need to be cheaper for them to make sense, right? So like even the larger Volk Miner unit, the D1, it's cheaper than the L9, but it's not enough of a discount, in my opinion, to justify it. Some cool features on the D1, though. We'll see when the reviews come out. But from what I've seen, being able to adjust the hash rate for you to kind of be able to clock it within the GUI, which is pretty cool. So cool features there. Hopefully it does do well. Hopefully it does hold up, because that does give us another option. But at this current time, for the price difference of about $1,500, I'm going to take the Bitmain unit, right? And then when we go farther down the list to like the DG1s, the DG1 Pluses, these would be the least efficient units I personally would consider, right? So like for me, the gold shells, for me personally, are out of the question. Also the L7s. I'm not going to pay these current price points for a 3-year-old ASIC, right? Again, I want longevity. I want to increase my likelihood of being profitable into the bear market. Okay, so for me, the worst ones I would consider would be like the DG1s, the DG1 Pluses, which aren't too bad. Actually, the DG1 Plus, out of the current prices, is probably a little bit more appealing. It's not as efficient as the L9 or the Volk miner, but density-wise, right? 14.4 gigahash for about under 11K. It is available now. The problem is the efficiency, right? It's damn near 4,000 watts, probably a little bit higher in higher climates. Something to consider there, but it's just hard to justify at its current price point, right? But again, it's going to be dependent on the individual and what you're doing. Like for me, the threshold is going to be like I need to offload some of my ASICs personally, right? So once the K7 potentially has a pump, the K3 has a pump, and they're worth a little bit more, I would definitely, gonna be selling those, and then whatever profits are generated from there or the revenue from there, gonna probably go into a script ASIC, right? So for me, I'm waiting for it to pump a little bit more. Whether it happens, will it happen? We don't know, right? Maybe it stays sideways and does this Cadena thing where it doesn't actually have a pump until November, and I kind of get stuck mining with them all the way through. That's fine, right? I've accepted that fate. That is a possibility. The hope would be maybe these next 2-3 months, it does have a nice run up. The K7 goes up to 4 to 5K. The K3 goes up to 4 to 5K. And then I'll sell them at that price, potentially selling them both in exchange for a L9 or for another algorithm, right? The other one I have my eye on, just for the same reasons, for the longevity reasons, are ETH hash ASICs. The downfall for me, though, is realistically, again, now from seeing how like the Jazz Miner is and such, I wouldn't want to have more than a handful of these units, right? So like for the example, these I wouldn't necessarily consider the little indoor units. These I would consider if it's just like a singular unit, right? So if it's a denser unit, like to me, the most appealing would be that damn X44P or X44Q, just because it would be an indoor unit, but it's a fairly dense unit considering the competition. Okay, the problem though, and why I honestly wouldn't even factor it in now, is which ASIC reseller has the best relationship with Jazz Miner? It is Jingle Mining. Okay, they do have it up here. They do have a price point, which we don't know if that's going to be the official MSRP or not. But look at the release window. Okay, expect it to be released 2025 Q3. Q3, guys. So that's going to be towards the end of this damn thing. So for me, wouldn't even consider it at this point. Same with the P. Maybe the P comes out sooner, but the P is going to be crazy expensive. So that kind of sucks. So because of that, what are the next in line? Okay, the Jazz Miner is on the cheaper end. This is going to be your budget unit, right? If you want a more expensive, more dense unit, you're going to be looking up here. Okay, and realistically, the budget unit now is going to be the V2X, which apparently they may be a small batch in February, but probably the bulk of them won't be coming out until after, just because of all the holidays and such. But the V2H is in stock from certain places. Okay, so it's 3.4 gigahash, 475 watts. The direct competitor here is going to be the Bombax unit, 3800 megahash, but at 760 watts. Okay, so pretty big difference in efficiency, although not massive, again, depending on your scale. This guy may come down, so could be appealing, but this guy currently will probably be the more appealing unit, and it is available now at this price point. Okay. It's one I'm considering, but realistically, for me personally, again, this is my individual goal. I'm gonna be saving whatever profit taking I do for a larger script ASIC, right? This will probably be more of a, after I get that script ASIC, may buy one or two of these, right? We'll have to wait and see, wait to play around with it. But again, it's hard to say, right? But for realistically, the appeal here though is just the fact that it is likely to be, because of its efficiency, likely to be profitable beyond this bull market. ETC is a mature network. You also have the advantage of having the versatility of mining those different coins. Okay, just also factor in with like the iPolo units, you're only getting that 6 gigs of RAM. Okay, Jazz Miner, like 16Qs, have that 8 gigs of RAM for that ETHW or any other future potential coins that require a DAG size larger than 6 gigs. Right, just something to factor in there. But another big thing to consider here is the competition. E9 Pro, massively outdated now. Potential for a new unit sometime this spring, right? Will we get that E11? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they give up, maybe they concede just because of the competition here now, which is pretty significant. iPolo, Bombax, Jazz Miner, all having way more efficient units than E9 Pro. So maybe they will, maybe they won't. Again, if you're into any of these other algos, expect potentially some action in Q1. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. Right? So for me, into 2025, the only ones I'm really looking at, script ASICs, ETH hash ASICs, more so than anything though, the script ASICs. Right? The downfall here is that these are mainly at-home units. And for me, if I'm going to spend this kind of cash, like 10 to 15K on a unit, it's going to be a script ASIC. Okay, so kind of a rough one, kind of a rough time. I know it sounds like I'm being negative on all the other algos, but that's just my personal viewpoint. Again, if I don't feel confident that I'm going to get at least 1.5, maybe 2 years out of mining on it, as far as an ASIC goes, I personally don't have much interest just from my strategy, which I like to just plug in, mine, and hodl, right? I'm not trying to move around coins too much and do all this and do that. That's just my viewpoint of the market and where we are at, how it's going, what I'm looking for in 2025. But again, I do expect to be more releases these next few months. Okay, February, March, April. Going to be some new announcements at that point. Will it make sense to buy them? Again, they're probably going to be elevated prices if the market does run. But if you are profit taking, or this is another huge thing to factor that I didn't talk about in the beginning that I kind of skipped over. Okay, so if you've been stacking for quite a while, right, these past 2-3 years, what is most likely one of your big goals this year? To profit take, to realize those gains. Meaning what? Gonna be paying a significant amount in taxes. So a lot of us who are running this thing as a business, what are we gonna do this year? Probably be investing in hardware to kind of help offset that burden. Okay, so this is another reason why a lot of people will be looking at ASICs even at these crazy prices in order to kind of offset what we know is likely to happen, right? Depending on the extent of your farm, depending on the extent of just your portfolio as a whole. Like I know for me, for example, I'm going to be dumping a significant amount. My tax bill, so this is another thing to consider here for any guys who are setting your goals, doing all these things. Factor in those taxes. Factor in that tax bill, which again, if you've been stacking for 2-3 years pretty significantly, it's going to be hefty, right? Hopefully, we do have a lot of gains, and this is a good problem to have, but just factor that in. Like, set an allotment aside for those taxes, because it's going to be pretty significant, right? So just factor those things in. And that was a super long one, guys, but did want to go do a deep dive as to why I'm not necessarily bullish on a lot of these altcoin ASICs and why realistically it's those that I'm looking at and the reason why, right? So let me know in the comments, guys. What are you guys doing, right? Are you guys completely done? I know a lot of you guys, like I know my cutoff was like September, October for a lot of these. For me to add any more, realistically, I need to offload some of mine. And I'm waiting for that price appreciation in order to do so to make room, right? But let me know in the comments, guys. What are you guys doing? How are you guys feeling? Or are you guys set? I know for the most part, a lot of us were set. But let me know in the comments, guys. Please comment, like, and subscribe, guys. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it. And I am out.